Great. Good evening, everyone. This is a business meeting. It is, first we'll do the pledge and then we'll go into the meeting. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. What's the matter?
No, well, actually, we'll do the special meeting at the end.
So
in this one, we can.
Yeah, let me just make a couple. I feel like this is not on. Jesse, is it on? Okay.
It is. You sound good.
Oh, thanks, Jamie. A couple of announcements. We have the work session agenda on the agenda, and we have a special meeting. So just a word on what work sessions are. We're going to move a couple of items on the agenda because we have two big pieces. One is our annual presentation from our land use boards, which will go first, and there's 4 of them. Volunteer groups. Thank you guys for being here. We'll hear each of you separately, and then I think the public will get a really good overview of the 4 land use boards that we have in the village, and we'll go through explanation of that. And we will then skip over to the parklet. So the people who are here for that, we normally have nobody in the audience except on Zoom. So I feel like some people are here for the parklet, so we don't want to make everybody wait through the entire agenda. So we will move that up one to go after the annual presentations from the land use boards, and we'll do the special at the end. And then we're going to go, the board will go into executive session. I'm going to do some announcements, and then I'm going to explain the difference between a work session and legislative session, where some people might not clearly understand. So do you have any announcements? You guys have anything? Okay, so I'm only going to wish everybody who celebrates a very lovely St. Patrick's Day coming up. Enjoy the time. And I have fond memories of St. Patrick's Day, but as I get older, I try to forget some of those memories. I'm sure we all have fond memories of those days. So that's one of the announcements. It's still Women's History Month. Please look at websites. There's lots of educational items for all sorts of events for women's history. Ossining has always been a leader in female leadership because we oftentimes have had female mayor up to assembly, up to state, and we still have that actually. So we're always happy about that. So a little bit about what a work session is, which is different than legislative sessions. That's okay. So work sessions are sessions. Do you grow your beard out? How are you? Not you, him. I just noticed him. So the work sessions are as follows. Here's what happens and what doesn't happen. Legislative sessions twice a month is where we vote and we look at legislation, policies, etc. And there are 3 areas where the public speaks about agenda items, about organizational items, and then about any item. Work sessions are between staff presenting to the board on discussions of matters on the agenda. That's why we publish the agendas the Friday before we have these meetings. We don't vote at work sessions on anything because it's not a legislative session, it's a work session. Most of the conversation is really amongst the people sitting here. And every once in a while, like tonight, we have invited groups that have been prepared in advance to be here. So there won't be any voting tonight on items. And some items don't require voting. Items, only resolutions require our votes. Budgets require our votes. The board has a fiduciary responsibility. And public conversations actually only occur at legislative sessions, not at these work sessions. At these work sessions, the public is invited, but there's no conversations that go on because it's actually a work session. They're much less formal, much more relaxed, et cetera, et cetera. So just want to let everybody know that. So we're going to move up one of the topics up on the agenda. And most of it is done by the village manager, who is up at bat and will introduce the topics.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So
As the mayor said, first we're going to have a presentation from from each of the chairs of our land use boards, so they can bring us up to speed with, in a general sense, what they're doing, and discuss anything that would be relevant for the board to know. So with that, I'd like to start with our planning board chair, Seth Roy.
Hi, Seth.
Hey, everybody. Good evening,
Good evening.
trustees and mayor. So I'll start off with just a brief kind of overview of what we do. I know that, we're one body, but we're two boards. So we do architectural review on one side, we do planning on the other, kind of two different tasks that we kind of streamline and do together. So for the past, year since I last met with you guys, I think that the majority of the applications that we tend to review are in the BAR. Over the past year have been in the BAR family, and with the minority in the planning projects tend to be larger developments where there's a site plan, a change in use, a new multi family building or commercial building. And so just observationally, that's been while those reviews take up a lot more of our time, it's been a minority of actual physical applications. We've actually seen a tremendous number of BAR applications that have been on the board for 5 years. More people fixing their houses, adding additions. I've seen that. It's been a notable uptick over the last 6 to 9 months, I would say. Where our board currently is full. Thank you, Karen. I think it's been great. We have 7 voting members and 2 alternates, and our attendance at our meetings recently has been great from a board perspective. And it's a really nice mix too. It's like we've had over the last 2 years a good deal of turnover, but I do feel like the people who are sitting with me around the table right now are a pretty good reflection of the community. People who are relatively new, people who have been here for a really long time. Kind of younger residents to older residents, and it's kind of been nice to see. It's kind of hard to know that too if you're not in the room and seeing the mix. So it's just wanted to bring that to your guys' attention as well. I also just want to over the last 2 years we've had some change in how just administratively how the board is run and how we've been supported by village staff, both the village employees. I'm looking at Maddie right there, who's been amazing, as well as the consultant team. And so, bringing on, Nelson Pope, and I know Valerie's behind me over there. So that kind of group with Valerie, we've had, Linda Whitehead, our attorney, and Taryn Ramney, who's now been working with us, from Linda's team, as well as Tony Grau from Keller Sessions. It's really worked a really cohesive group. I think that everybody kind of has a specialty. I meet monthly before our meetings with that full staff group, and Joe and Jamie as well from the building department. And what I've noticed and what it's changed is it's really allowed, we're getting the guidance ahead of time from the professional staff. But when we're in our meetings, it's really able, the voices being heard are the voices of the board are really able to speak with with that input. And I think that that's been a really positive change. I think it's been more of a board led hearing system over the last year. And then one thing that I would love to see more of, and this is nothing, I don't think there's anything that you as trustees can do, but is just to see more community input on our meetings. We get occasionally emails every once in a while. We have the use of Zoom has been, in theory, it should be really helpful. You imagine people would hear about a project in their neighborhood, and several projects have come up where I've kind of thought in my back of head, well, we're really going to hear from people about this one. And usually what happens is I hear about it like after they start building it, after the hearing process is over, and like how did the village allow that? And it's like, I wish they had done this. I'm like, I wish you had come and spoken to us, because that and that actually speaks to our process, right? We are not, you'll hear from some other boards today that are really kind of deciding yay or nay. It's almost a judicial process for some of these boards in terms of reviewing. That's not what we do. We're really looking at making sure that a project, when it's presented, is being designed and developed in a way that's, you know, consistent with the comprehensive plan of the village, that's with the laws and the codes and kind of common and best practices, and us as board members, as community members are able to do that. So I mean, that's kind of where we are. Just really quickly, and then I don't want to go on too long here. Just a couple of specific kind of actions that your board has taken over years and over the last couple of years. The payment in lieu of parking has been amazing for us. You know, that process has, I think, helped us to streamline our site plan review, and allowed us to focus on, I think, more you know, areas that we can actually make changes on, rather than, you know, parking, which in a lot of sites in this village, you know, the sites are landlocked and parking is it has been a real issue. So I just want to thank you. I think that's been really successful, from my perspective and from my board's perspective. You know, I just wanted to comment on the commercial overlay districts, which were imposed right after the last comprehensive plan was put in place. Right after that was enacted, we saw a huge number of applications that were filed under that you know, zoning law. And since then, over the last year and a half, very little. So it may have to do with the fact that more of what we're seeing right now are adaptations and changes to existing buildings and less new construction. So that's probably the reason. Again, just an observation, wanted to put that out there. And my last comment is one of the fact that all the chairs are here in the room today. And I know that, again, I think I've been here probably longer than some of these other chairs at this point. And we've talked over the years about having an informal, you know, meeting of the minds of all of us. I know we all deal with the same projects in different areas, and there are times when it's more important than less. But I would love to see you know, kind of a return to at least an occasional, even if it's quarterly or twice a year, you know, conversation amongst chairs to make sure that we're operating in a consistent way and speaking together. So
Great.
thank you. I'm here for, if you guys have any questions,
We
I'm
always
happy.
have questions. I appreciate it. Thank you, Seth.
Yeah.
So, and thank you for the brevity. It was very helpful. And just because we have people in the audience today, the regulars know this, but I usually speak less unless last. I'll let the trustees, and then, so we'll just follow that. Bob, questions, comments, if any?
Good evening. I see you guys, well, both of you once a month at least. No, everything's going great, and I'm in favor of that. You guys putting their heads together. I'd like to see it probably quarterly. You know, a lot going on.
Yeah.
Plus we lose a month in August. So, Stuart, would that be a problem if one of us was at that meeting? Not
You mean the joint meeting, just
Oh, the chairs, yeah.
of the chairs.
if you just wanted to sit in and listen, there's no objection to you sitting in and listening.
Okay. Just an idea.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions, Pat? Pat's our newest trustee.
Thanks. We've met before as part of
Yeah.
the comprehensive plan work and stuff like that.
Sure.
So first of all, thanks to you and the board for that. I'll say that to everybody. But I guess my question is, over the past years, what would you say would be the top 2 or 3 kind of sticky wicket issues that have come in front of you?
Sure. I mean, parking has come up repeatedly. I think that's been, you know, it's been a lot easier to deal with now. I think, you know, other than that, you know, we deal a lot of the delays or stops in projects deal with neighbor issues. So because of the way that, you know, the lots are very close, there's a lot of shared parking, shared driveways. That's an issue that's come up multiple times, where you know, a developer wants to do some work on their lot, but they'll need, you know, effectively, historically, the neighbors have always shared access, or the driveway isn't quite wide enough. So kind of sorting out easements and determining, you know, what people can and can't do. That's been a pattern. Multiple projects. In fact, several projects have effectively, you know, withered away and not come to fruition because of that issue. Those are a couple of big ones.
Dana, anything? No, it's hard. It's not easy. It's complicated. I couldn't do it.
I mean, you gotta really, you're an architect, right?
I'm an
So
architect.
that's good. Yeah, that's good. But, yeah, I appreciate what you do and whenever I watch a planning or Board of Architectural review meeting, I'm always amazed, at how you reach, how a project comes through the process. Takes a long time, but we're actually about to break ground on one, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna announce that. I should have announced it, but I'll do it after. we're done
Anyway,
with
thank
Seth.
you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
So I just took a couple of notes down. First of all, thank you, because not everybody understands that you're all volunteers. And these 4 boards, out of all of the committees, then they're all volunteer committees of people that live in the village of Ossining. So it's everybody's neighbors and et cetera, et cetera. So that also is difficult because it's all on your own time. So we really appreciate it. I just made a couple of notes here. The meeting of the minds, trustee Fritchie already asked, so that was gonna be my question. You guys should decide how often you think. That's actually why, as I said before the meeting started, I put you guys on one day because we used to spread it out because some of the presentations can get long depending on the chair, but you don't all know each other and you do work on similar projects. So consistency probably does make sense. You do have a lot of the same, not exactly, but a lot of the same professional staff, right? The land
Absolutely.
use lawyers, our own in-house folks, Stuart and his folks, the engineers, some of the staff, so I think there's that consistency that they can carry, and I'm glad to hear that's working out. And I'm glad to hear that democracy's at work here in Ossining, because actually land use boards are practically really remnants of pure democracy, not representation, but actually people in the community making some legal decisions, actually, that we don't make. And this is the exception. You guys actually make it. So I appreciate that. So we'll support if you need. You can call the village manager and set up if it's quarterly or whatever, it's your own time. So whatever works for you and whoever needs to be there, sounds great. Yeah, there is the new, project that I think on April 1, everybody's invited to it. It's not I posted it on Facebook already, but, on April 1 on 30 Water Street, which was at one point a village property, which we're building all affordable plus commercial space for those that are interested, they should contact the manager's office. And there's a community space. There will also be a parking garage that is 4 stories high because it's built into, and because
Yep.
you were on there, one of which will be for public use. So that should help with economic development in the waterfront. Plus, they are also the next step. The reason they are calling a press conference is they're doing the brownfielding, all the environmental issues which have become part of the site planning process. Certainly here in the village, not in all communities, I think have been very helpful, given that we're on the side of a cliff on the Hudson River.
Yeah.
So you don't get any closer to the environment and the effects the environment has on people's lives than when you live in that environment. So again, thank you. How many members of the board are there?
There's 9, including
There's 9 of
alternates.
you.
Yeah,
And that works in your opinion?
that works. That's a good
That's a good
number.
number?
And it's, as long as we can hold on to the 9, we need them because people have busy lives or can't make it back.
And they
to the city,
move and they move
yeah,
in and they move out and
Exactly.
just their life, basically. And are you full now? I don't remember.
We are full.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like you should get applause or something. That's like,
Parents should.
that's unbelievable. That actually rarely,
Yeah.
people are busy.
You've
That's
made it a
great.
very attractive volunteer opportunity.
Yes. No, that's great. Well, thank you. Much appreciated.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Next up.
Hey, so next up we have Kyle Aberizik, who is the chair of our zoning board of appeals.
Amazing,
How
Madam
are
Mayor.
you?
Fantastic. I haven't appeared here generally before, although I've been out to events with some of you. So I just want to introduce myself. Kyle Aberizik. I took over for Marlene Cheatham in October.
Yep.
I had been on the board with Marlene as chair the entire time. I started in 2021. I had met Karen on the street with my dog and said, I want to get involved with the village. I've lived here for 4 years already, and that's how it started.
Already 4 years, Bob. Man, he's been here 4 years.
No, well, I've been here 8 years now. But I
Bob's
was
been
here 4
4
years before I
he's been here
volunteered.
4 generations. That's why we laugh.
I know, I see that face. It's plastered on the street signs.
Well, welcome
Um,
to your first.
Thank you. So the zoning board of, what'd you say? Okay, I got a pen. So I wanted to also thank the other chairs of the other boards because it is all volunteer. I've learned a lot from the full-time staff and the people in this room. And like Seth, I would welcome the opportunity to meet the other chairs because a lot of our work spans multiple boards, especially with the planning board for the zoning board of appeals. Most of their large projects then come to us.
Right.
So I actually want to start going to the planning board meetings for that reason. So the zoning board of appeals acts as a safety valve for local zoning. We're a quasi judicial board. There are instances where people file Article 78s and our land use council needs to go to court. But you'll be happy to know that based on how Austining runs its boards, we usually win those cases. We are very streamlined. We do everything by the book. So I want to thank the full-time staff for that. Like Seth, we are now fully staffed for the first time since I've been here.
Another applause.
Another board. For us, it's 7, it's 5, 5 members with 2 alternates. And this meeting we had yesterday is the first one where everyone was there all together. So thank you to Maddie and
Did
Karen's
you
office.
start, I remember meeting you and you saying the same thing you had just said. And I thought to myself, man, I hope so. So.
Oh, yeah,
thanks for
it
doing
was-
that.
it
I
was-
remember meeting you at an event. The alternates.
Yes.
Were you an alternate and then gone on or?
I
you
was
ju-
an alternate for 2 months, just like Marlene was. And
Okay.
because people moved, there was no choice but to upgrade me. So
Right.
trial by fire.
No, the question is whether alternates make a lot of sense, and I actually think they do, because we didn't
Absolutely.
always have them. That was a change that occurred. Well, we just didn't have them filled. Marlene has been on many committees, and then her life got busy, in a good way, and she
Um,
had let us know that.
I think they're extremely important. I followed what Marlene did. She kind of trained me to take over for her in
Great.
advance. So when she was out, I was just ready to go in.
Great.
The alternates sub probably at least one time in half the meetings of the year. So
Yeah,
if for a
that's great.
quorum, we absolutely need them.
That's great. Sorry for interrupting. Go
No,
ahead.
all good. Also, congratulations to Marlene, who won the Distinguished Citizen Planner Award
Yes.
last May from Westchester Municipal Planning
That's
Federation.
where we saw each other.
That is where we saw
Right.
each other. So also, like Seth mentioned, our board is various ages, various generations of people who have lived in Austining or Westchester, bilingual, several of the board members. I think it's become representative of the community that we serve. We're really proud of that. We've had 49 applications this past year, just like the planning board. Some of those span multiple meetings or years based on adjournments. So 37 of them were new, fresh applications. 12 of them were continuing. And our meetings run anywhere from last night's meeting of 42 minutes to 3 hours or more, depending on how participative the community is. So I have one recommendation, one clarification. The recommendation would be virtually every single meeting, we have requests for porch or stair replacements, same as like they're there. We shouldn't have to deal with those, and that's not for us. We feel terrible for the homeowners who have to pay the fees, come to see us knowing that 100% of the time it's pretty much a rubber stamp and we're going to say yes. So we've heard feedback from the community members, the board members, our land use council. I think it would be a really easy fix. The planning office can just take care of those. If they're changing the shape and size of their porch, different story, but this is just, my stairs are in bad shape. I need to replace them same as they are. So I think that would be an easy fix to reduce bureaucracy, increase village happiness and taxpayer expense.
So you should know that Stuart Kahan has brought that to our attention. I'm gonna say 2 work sessions ago, many work sessions ago, and Valerie was involved. So there's an entire conversation of streamlining, which has been going on like every year. Case in point, that the chairs actually now see the progress made by this board, making some unsexy but effective changes. So I appreciate the feedback on that. But that exact issue has been brought up. It's in with Valerie and Maddie and Joe, who is also involved, and the board to look at that as an issue along with other such issues where people can maybe have it done administratively rather than by a board that meets once a month.
Yeah,
So
very
I
interested in that.
appreciate that.
And the clarification is probably one of the most contentious things that we hear, where a couple meetings ago, we actually had to use the gavel because the meeting got so out of control, has to do with parking. That's no surprise. But to narrow it down a little bit, it's parking in the front yard versus parking on the street.
Mhm.
The village code explicitly preferences parking on the front yard versus the street if there's no other option. So we are bound to prioritize
Mhm.
front yard parking, which my personal bias is against that, but that's not how the code is written. So I think I just wanted to bring that up because I've been hearing a lot of people talk about the front yard parking, and our hands are a little bit tied on that.
Yeah, that is also in that package of areas for, you're right, it's clarifying, I'm sorry? Oh, it's clarifying the code. We discussed it a couple of meetings ago. The thing about the code changes, they then have to go to resolution. So we don't want to do little piecemeal.
Yeah.
We are gathering and then we're going to bundle and move that forward. So I too am in your school of thought, especially since I drove through the Bronx this morning and saw
Yeah.
what happened to homes that now have basically
Yeah.
pavement right up to their front door,
Yeah.
parked with multiple cars.
So I
And
will
what that
probably be
looks like.
coming to those meetings that are open to the public, because that's
There's
there's a lot
something-
of
yeah.
nuance to those
Yes,
situations.
there are many nuances. It's a challenging issue,
Yeah.
actually, very challenging, especially in old village based in the
Yeah.
1800s.
All the river towns probably have similar issues with parking.
River towns are tough.
Yeah.
They're tough because of their age. They're tough because they weren't built for what they're being used for and so many people. They're tough because they're on the side of a cliff for the most part. When you go on the Hudson and you look up, you realize all the river towns are literally on a hill or a mountain or a cliff, fill in the very few straight lines. So it's very challenging. But the age is probably the biggest piece of it, is the 1800s, 1900 issue. Great.
So that's all I've got unless there's
Good.
any questions.
So I didn't ask Seth, so I can do it. Again, it's a work session. We don't have to, it's not legislative, so we can be less formal. Is there anything besides those things that you want us to look at? And I'll ask all the chairs, so you could have that in advance, that the board needs to do for you to help, either with money, with folks, with the consultants you covered, so I'm not going to ask that. But is there anything that you guys need for this upcoming year,
I mean,
for the committee?
to show my bias cards again, I wish we were meeting here versus the operations center. People find it easier to congregate here.
Yeah, so we've
Uh,
discussed that as well,
Oh,
actually.
look at
No,
this.
because the staff that goes to your meetings have actually brought that back to us about whether it's the operational center, a new community center, possibly other areas here. There is a shortage of space,
Yeah.
and so not all day, every day, but on the same 2 or 3 days, or the same 2 or 3 evenings, there's a shortage. Library has the same problem, it's like your hand, up and down, up and down. They're either totally empty or they're totally full. Everybody wants everything at the same time on
Yeah.
the same days. So we did come to our attention. We're looking into that. So appreciate that feedback as well.
I've also heard and seen from Marlene, you guys have made small changes over the years that have actually helped streamline things for us. So this is a general thank you for that, because you have heard those needs and adapted to them. I don't think budgeting finances are an issue for us.
Okay.
I don't know the back end of it. I'm a volunteer.
No, it's
So-
fine. Look, this board has approved in budgets, lawyers and our in-house counsel for a number of committees, some of whom in other municipalities bigger and wealthier than us don't have.
Hmm.
It's a good investment because you see what happens over time. And we are hearing back, which I think is just like was said earlier, the staff, this is what they spend a lot of time on. This is like the guts of a lot of, we have about 13 committees, volunteer committees. You guys are 4 of them. They each have like 5 to about 9 or 11. To me, it's like a focus group of about 120 citizens who live, you don't have to be a citizen, but people who live and work here, mostly live because you have to be a resident, who share information. It's like a built-in community focus group. It's fantastic. For us, it's great, I think, anyway. and for the staff as well. So appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Feel free to contact us with anything else or through the folks that you work with every day.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your service as well.
Thank you very
All right.
much, Kyle.
Oh, Kyle, I'm sorry. I didn't go through the questions of the,
I was curious
Of the- because it was such a,
Sorry, we
it
jumped
was such
ahead.
a, I
Yeah,
felt like
sorry.
it was such a win. I don't need to have anybody speak. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. You brought up a good point with we've made some changes with the administrative
Yeah.
part of it where Joe can just, up to what, 10%. So the front steps, we hear you. It's that we discussed it.
Yeah.
It's coming. It's in the pipeline.
My part's done on that.
I served on a zoning board. So
Mhm.
believe me, I know how painful it is to see somebody come up and say, well, no, yeah, okay, boom, and it's done. And it's just not fair to the residents. So we want to make it better for them. Thank you.
Anything, Pat?
So once again, thank you very much for you and the board service. Really good. It's fantastic. So I guess my question for me is the previous board and the administration have done a lot of work to clean up the code
Mhm.
over the course of the last year, which I think is, some of the things like the administrative relief and things like that, making it will hopefully make a difference. My question is kind of like on the unintended consequences. Have you seen, as part of the planning board, any surprises come up from the changes that were made over the course of the last year or not?
Not just to support you all, but I actually think they've all been beneficial. We're to the point now where I believe we're just cleaning up little holes here and there, and that's the place we want to be. So I've heard I go to the Westchester Municipal Planning Federation conferences, and I love the land use stuff. I've discovered that serving on this board. And Austin gets high praise from our other boards and other municipalities because they use us as a standard in many ways. And I don't know if you know that, but that's come out of my time in the last 4 years.
I've
So
been told that. I don't usually get told by volunteer residents.
yeah,
So it's good to get that as feedback. I'm not surprised. As you know, I go to a lot of events. And when I say events, I mean conferences. I shouldn't call them events. It sounds like I'm having a great old time. But I have gone and I don't have like a great of a time. But I have gone and it in the past, I would say like 5 to 6 years or so. They always talked about certain communities and now that handful that gets
Mhm.
referred to in a positive way. There are also some that have issues. Austin has been right on right top there. And so it is nice to see it. But again, it's not the sexiest work. So I am happy that some people
speak for
appreciate it.
yourself.
Yes, apparently so far, every chair has been, the next chair after you is gonna have to like really up the game over here. But no, we appreciate it because years ago when I became a trustee, this was one of the reasons actually. Trustee, I felt that there was a lot of cumbersome, slow movement. And there was no reflection on anyone in particular. It just felt that way, but I think there's been a nice change. So thank you,
Absolutely.
appreciate that. Jada? I don't want to forget you.
What are we that people are saying? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing right?
A few specific examples, this may or may not surprise you, but our note taking and our meeting agendas, not everybody does that the way that's recommended or required. So that's probably the low bar for things that we do right. I think the high bar would be every single decision we make by the book is based on New York State zoning law, 5 factors or 4 factors. And board members take turns discussing it in detail. So in the instances where we do get taken to court, we usually prevail. I think the most notable case was right up here on Croton Avenue, where a lot of incorrect things were done. And through the court system, I think the way that we do things was validated. No bias, even if I want something done a certain way, it's not about me. Same with all the rest of the boards. It's what is the code, what are the needs of the community, and how do you balance those? So I think our attention to detail from our full-time staff and participation from the volunteers is what sets us apart.
Great,
That's great.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, sir. Who's up next?
Okay, next we have Mark Hall. And Mark is here as the acting chair of the Historic Preservation Committee, standing in for Dan Garbowit, who cannot be here tonight. So
Mhm.
welcome, Mark.
Hello, thank you. It's good to be here.
Hello, Mark.
Thanks. Hello. Again, Mark Gosapol standing in for Dan Garbowit. He couldn't be here this year he's got a family issue. This year, I think we have a full board as well, which has been
Oh my
great.
God.
Because
What has happened?
we've had a close call on a quorum a couple of times and that's never good. So that's been really great. Chairman Garbowit's done a good job. And it's good to see. I think we have a bit more of an eclectic mix. I felt like we were a little too architect heavy for a while. So I was glad that we were getting some non-architects on the board, which is good. This year we've seen a number of different applicants. That's kept us pretty busy. We've usually got 1 or 2 weeks. It's been been a pretty short agenda, which is fine. But our goal is to balance the historic requirements and maintaining the historic integrity of the village with the request of the landowner, because we can't expect them to have really rich, authentic detailing on what is a reasonable budget, depending on who they
Right.
are. So we don't want to be seen ever as an impediment to development or improvement. More that we want to help them to enhance it within their own means. And I think we've been pretty successful with doing that on some. We've, in some cases, we've sort of given some suggestions on some avenues they might want to take when they come back and represent. And it's been, I think in most cases they see the project as better for it and are glad that we had made those suggestions. So in those cases, I think it's been really successful. So that's been good.
Great.
The more we can keep the authenticity of our town intact, the village, the better. That's what we're there for. So it's been good. It's been satisfying when we can do that.
Okay.
And then this year, so we're working on a couple other initiatives. One of the initiatives is we want to get some information onto the historic portion of the website, talking about the historic Black District. We were working with Joyce Cole on that. She's given us a fair amount of good information. And so we're in the process of developing that information and getting it vetted, and then eventually it will be up on the site. Additionally, we want to put some information in place about what's necessary for either state or federal historic preservation designations, in case anyone's interested, just to put that kind of information on there, because it might help some people understand some guidelines, because a lot of what we do is really based on those guidelines. For example, we're not actually expecting a building to be exactly of a period in time, because many buildings, they change over time and they're kind of an eclectic mix. It's more that whatever is done looks, historically authentic, with the history we have. And then we also have our historic structures guide, which we review at least once a year, sometimes more often. And then we make any adjustments to that we need, or add to it as necessary, just so that it's, a living, accurate document. And I think that's pretty much, I think that's everything. Yeah.
Great.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you. This
Yeah.
time I'm going to start to my right and save my questions. I have a few questions to the end. I'm gonna start with you. I forgot to say that you guys also have liaisons from the board that do not actively necessarily, but do participate with you. But I'm going to start to the
Well,
right.
it's hard not to participate. I am the liaison, but I used to be on the HPC and the village
Okay.
historian. So of course I'm always ready to pipe in, and I'm not allowed to. And it bums me out. But that's okay. You guys do a great job. You don't need me. But one thing that now within your purview is the basically right-hand side of Main Street, right? The historic district, right?
Mhm. Depending on
As
which
you're going
direction. you're
down.
going.
And as well as
As you're going
landmarked
as you're going
properties,
South, yeah,
as well as
Yeah.
landmarked properties, right?
yeah, in Sparta. Mhm.
Do you have any desire to try and do more landmarking? It's not easy.
We haven't really discussed it.
Yeah,
So given that, probably not,
yeah.
but we can maybe bring it up to the next board if anyone's seen any area or any particular structures that should be considered.
Are you saying you
yeah.
think they should, or are you just asking the question objectively?
No, I think more things should be landmarked, but it's very challenging,
Mhm.
because you have to get the owner to buy in. You have to, it can place some restrictions on what you can do if you're landmarked. So
Mhm.
not everybody's into it. But anyway, and then the other thing is signage. You also approve signs on businesses,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
How is that going? Do you find that that's a useful use of your time is
Very much so.
signs?
Yeah, we get a fair number of those. And when you see what was proposed versus what we're then able to work with them on, and so that it actually relates to the building and the different um I think it's the preservation guide. We have some examples in
Mhm.
in that architectural guide, design guidelines. Thank you, Maddie. We'd be lost without Maddie, for sure.
Oh, we all would,
Um,
yes.
No.
And so I think that has been very, very helpful because some of the glaring, audacious signs that we would end up with if we didn't have that review, I think would really detract from the historic integrity of the village. And so I think I feel like that's a very important part of what we review. I know it's cumbersome for the owner to, they just want to put this dumb little sign in the building, but then they have to put it in front of a board. Inevitably, I can't think of a sign that we've actually approved in the first round. We've almost always had to make some kind of adjustment, or they're asking for more, or they've got more lighting on it, or and we don't want to discourage them from not we want the business to be vibrant. That's, we don't want to for people to not know they're there, but at the same time, it needs to fit within the the historic district aesthetic.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We are gonna go, oh, just got here. Were you listening to this? Okay.
Always.
Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. My main question is you brought up working with the historian on elevating some of the Black history in Ossining. Curious if there are any other pieces of Ossining's history in addition that feel like they should be lifted up, whether it's particular nationalities, particular events, anything like that is helpful. If you can expand on that.
We haven't discussed that, but that's a great topic. We will bring it up within the board. Because if it's true diversity, it does, it elevates everyone, right? So, but we haven't.
Okay,
talked
thank
about
you.
that, but
Yeah,
thank you.
homework for next year.
Thanks for the question.
I'll remember.
It's not due next week, but,
All right. Well,
but thinking
Dan's
about-
not here, so he just gets lots of homework. It's easy, no.
Well, ask the village
Yeah.
historian if there are other groups that have
Yeah.
been here a long time as
Yeah.
part of the history to, however she evaluates it, that would be
Yeah.
helpful.
Mhm.
We're going down this way, sir? Anything?
Oh, jumping right
Oh,
over.
you-
But just say, once again, thank you very much. And actually, my question was already asked. So
Okay,
Great.
all right,
And Mr. Fritchie.
Same
We're
thing.
all
Thank
good?
you very much.
you're welcome.
My questions have been answered.
Okay.
Thank
So I
you.
appreciate the comment on architects. Thank you for
You're welcome.
being here tonight. The committee actually was started. One of the founders was actually a former trustee, and it was with an architectural eye.
Mhm.
What happened? Somebody have a question? Oh, okay.
Mhm.
So, I'm glad to hear it's more diversified now.
Mhm.
And, if there's anything the board, can do, or, whether it's financial space, whatever, for the committee for the next year,
Mhm.
is there
I
anything
think,
that
meeting here is a great idea,
versus,
um,
where are you in the operations?
operations
Yeah.
building. And then also the idea of having the chairs get together.
You
I
like
think-
that
I
idea?
think that idea, but also open it up to the regular members as well, because I'd love to mix and mingle with members of the other boards, not being a chair. I still want to, talk to the other board members.
Okay,
So.
we'll
you know,
have to,
there's something-
Tuesday.
sounds like
I think
another
so.
bigger event.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
No, so I mean,
Uh-huh.
look, we've also tried all 13 committees. We had a couple of years where we tried to bring everybody, like, and I was sort of wanting to talk to everybody. It's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of people couldn't make it because no matter which of the 7 nights of the week you
Yeah.
choose, people have families, they have businesses, they have work, they have everything. So it's hard.
Yeah,
And
agreed.
we tried to have food, we tried all different things. But I think starting with 4 committees that are related or interlocked
Mhm.
is like a great place to start. And I think that's that's absolutely doable. And as
Yeah.
far as space and usage of what space, I mean, that really needs to be a 2025 conversation, I think,
Yeah.
Maddie, for, where, because this room gets used by, also for
Mhm.
lots of things.
Yeah.
The town uses it for its meetings. We use it. It gets used at different points in time, but we're gonna have to look into
Yeah.
that. We
Yeah,
are
because
looking into
as
it.
long as it-
Mentioned my microphone's on. We did talk about it a little bit. It might necessitate changing one of the meetings to a different night of the week,
Yeah.
but so obviously we'd have to get everybody's
You'd have
buy-in,
to.
but I think it's doable.
Yeah, we'll get this done. I mean, we'll get it done.
And
No
for
big
the,
deal.
and for the meeting of the mind, so to speak. I mean, as long as it works around the schedule of the four chairs.
Yeah, we'll get it.
and
The
then
four
everybody
chair, we'll
else
get this
is
done.
Optional.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.
Great.
Pleasure.
You're up.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Next I'd like to introduce Katie Alberti, who is here for the Environmental Advisory Committee, and she is standing in for our advisory chair, Kate Schlott, but we have Katie
Yes,
Alberti tonight.
and my remarks are going to be read verbatim from the statement that Kate gave me this afternoon when she said, could you come? But I'm really honored to be on this council, and it's been a pleasure. I think I've been on it for 4 years, 3-4 years. Totally since the beginning of COVID, and we've been meeting on Zoom the whole time. I'm not going to take it upon myself to make a recommendation that we don't, but I'm going to start actually with a remark that Kate put towards the end. We are a council that is supposed to have 7 members. We have 3.
Yeah.
And that, I think, keeps us from getting as much done as we could and being as helpful to the village as we could be. So whatever the board can do to find us more people would be greatly.
Yeah, that's
Appreciate
actually, I started with the EAC myself
Yeah.
as a person living here. I loved it. And I also did RAB, that's how I met Pat Yost. I have to, yeah, we met there, right? So that's why I kept asking, because it's actually, I think in your case, people moved, actually. There were people who
yes.
moved. I think
To
somebody.
Europe, in fact.
Yeah, that's right. She moved to Europe. She's still on Facebook with everybody from Ossining, but people just move. And it's just a coincidence that the boards are full and we need it because you need a quorum, you need a bunch of things. So we will continue to push. We do have some resumes from people. I mean, the environmental advisory is so important here in Ossining. We have so many environmentalists. We just gotta get some people on board here.
Yeah, and
But
I'm sure
thank
there are
you.
people out there. So I will read what Kate put together. The Environmental Advisory Council is a 7-member council that advises the Board of Trustees on matters affecting preservation, development, and use of the natural and man-made features and conditions of the village, conducts studies, surveys, and inventories of the village's natural and man-made features, maintain an up-to-date inventory of all open spaces within the village, maintain communication with public and private agencies whose activities have an impact on the quality of the environment, and such other duties as may be assigned by the Board of Trustees. Pursuant to Chapter 262 of the Village Code, the EAC shall make recommendations to the Board of Trustees, Planning Board, or Zoning Board of Appeals regarding whether a proposed action is consistent with the village's local waterfront revitalization program, the LWRP. EAC is also designated as an interested agency for the review of environmental impact statements under the State Environmental Quality Review Act, SECRA. Over the course of 2024, EAC has worked on the following: conducted local waterfront revitalization program reviews for ordinance updates, met to brainstorm and discuss the scale and scope of conducting a natural resources open space inventory, attended training sessions regarding natural resources and open space inventories provided by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and informational webinars provided by the Hudson River Waterfront Alliance. Spent the better part of the year working with the village's planning analyst and our Board of Trustees liaisons to revise the village's tree permit ordinance. And there are more layers to that as we keep looking at it, but we're going to have it done
The
this and-
trees.
Yes.
Yes.
We were part of the Westchester County Climate Action Planning Institute program, which created the GHG inventory for the village as part of the steps needed to decrease our greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and 2050. We were part of the preliminary review of the climate action plan for the village of Austining as part of the CAPI program and helped to identify actions the village can take to address the greenhouse gas emissions. What do we need from you? More volunteers, and we've been through this. And Kate's statement, I cannot in good faith expect the EAC to make any new village commitments without additional council members to help lift the workload. And she's holds most of that in her hands. She's amazing. Support for a natural resource and open space inventory. One of the responsibilities of the EIC is to create an inventory of the village's natural and open space features. The need for a natural resource and open space inventory was identified in our 2021 Village Comprehensive Plan under Objective 7.11 and Strategy 7.11.1 and was adopted as steps the village could take over the next 2 years in the Climate Action Plan submitted to Westchester County CAPI. Conducting a natural resource and open space inventory is not a small undertaking and requires technical assistance. While the data are publicly available on the Westchester County GeoHub, and Kate actually knows what that is and knows how to work with it.
Well, Kate's also a professor at a university on this topic.
Exactly. They are not presented in a way that is meaningful to the general public, making the search for this type of information by Austining residents difficult. I understand that the Board of Trustees does not consider this type of project to be a priority at this time. However, I would ask that the Board of Trustees reconsider this stance since the need for the inventory has been expressed on numerous occasions over the last 6 years. I would hate to see the village undergo their next comprehensive plan review with this objective still left unfulfilled. And she said she would be happy to schedule an appointment to follow up, and thanks the mayor and the Board of Trustees for their time.
Thank you. I'm gonna start with questions. Thank you for everything. Good job.
Thank you.
It's not so easy to stand there and speak into the mic, right?
No.
We get that a lot. I'm gonna start to my right about the EAC and go to my left, and I'll ask a couple of questions.
I was the liaison during COVID. I remember that. You know, it's a remarkable group of very smart people. I think we have some good candidates in the pipeline to talk to
Yeah.
about joining, but I think it's you and Kate and Nick,
Yes, that's
basically. Yeah.
posted.
A lot of people left for one reason or another. So, yeah, we really need to do a full court press on that. So, but thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
No questions on my end, just gratitude for the work that you do and hoping indeed to double your numbers in the
That would be
coming
great.
year. Indeed.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, whoever wants to go next.
Excuse me. Yeah, I have no questions on my end, but again, thank you for everything you do and hopefully we can fill your board.
That would be great.
I'll be quick. And I say, one, thank you. And two, I'm looking forward to serving as the liaison over the course of the year. Thank you.
So again, thanks. Just tell me again, there was a certain amount of money that she requested. Somehow, 2,500 comes to my mind. It was 25, went up to 3,000. We talked of maybe the youth advisory group helping with this as something they can do. Tell me again what the study is that she's asking for.
I don't know the details
Okay.
beyond a kind of superficial level, but essentially in a larger.
Oh,
and I'm-
we might be able to help you. Valerie's sitting right there and raise. So if I could call you up. So thank you, Valerie. You want to grab my mic or you want her mic or stand right there?
Yeah, so a natural resources inventory, what it will do is it would take all the data available both on the state level and the county level. And basically you develop maps that identify your most important resources. So it would have, for example, like a water resources map where it combines your like wetlands layers and your hydric soils layers and your stream layers. And basically then you create a map where people can see where all your water resources are. There will be like another map specifically dealing with geological resources, another map that specifically deals with environmental resources. I think what Katie was saying is that the way the data is in the state open resource GIS layers as well as the county GIS layers is that they're all individual layers. And then you have to sort of combine them and you have to identify which of those particular layers are the most important. And you have to kind of clip them for the village of Austining so that it's just specifically focused on the village of Austining. And then you tweak them a bit depending upon some of the other local resources. So it is a little bit of it is definitely technical and it's something that you have to kind of requires a little bit of knowledge of those natural resources as well.
So 2 questions to either or both of you. Number one, when you get all the maps done, and I was surprised since the county spent who knows how much doing this, and then the state spent another who knows how much doing this, but it sounds like they have a bunch of data points. Now you got to pull data points to get information, right? So what do you do with the information? What do you do? What would anybody in the village do with that?
I'm going to speak to what became apparent to me as we were talking
Sure,
about
of
the tree
course.
ordinance, tree banks, and the importance of trees to mitigating heat islands within the village. And I think I've lived in the village for 32 years, but didn't spend a lot of time in it because I spent most of my time on the train going to the city till I retired. My sense of Austining is that it changes so much from block to block, to district to neighborhood to neighborhood.
Right.
And you can't just say, we have 40 acres of trees here. I think it makes a lot of difference on a block by block basis of what the resources are. So in terms of trees, where are the places that need trees? I mean, that's one data point, correct? And the natural resources. Where are the neighborhoods that have no trees, no shade, so you walk down the sidewalk and you're baking? And that could be something easily found if we had a real natural resources inventory.
Okay. So
That's just one thing.
So but at least it explains what one does, because data on its own is nothing. I mean, you have to then have somebody pull it together. So there was an ask for 3,000. My recollection was that it was a yes, and then I'm not sure where we went with it, or maybe my recollection is wrong, but it's like we talked about this. She's right.
So
This is not the first time.
Yeah, no, you're correct. So I believe there are 2 different components. It's not just the funding, it was also how much of Nelson Pope Voorhees' time, based on the other things on the planning work plan for
Okay.
2025, we wanted to assign to this. I think there's certainly bandwidth to do it. Valerie and Danielle work very, very closely with Kate, Katie, and Nick, and with Stuart, on all of these things. And I think there's certainly the willingness. I think it was $3,000 was just sort of a roundabout estimate, and I could be absolutely wrong about that, but that's based on, largely consultant time.
Yeah, so I don't know where the 3,000 came from, but
Maybe I made it
but
up.
there are, for example, like Greenway grants. It's something that, the village might want to consider. You can do a grant for that type of work as well. So I'm just, those are some options if for some reason the village wants to seek some additional outside funding. The town of Austining right now is going through an open space plan with Greenway grant funding. And so it's not really that heavy of a lift. And it's one of those it's a very small grant for anybody that's in Greenway, and you can get up to like, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Okay, and I think you're right. She's right. By the time we do the next comprehensive plan, so that's in 4 years, right? So if it takes a year to get this, that'll be 3 years away from that. It would actually be the right time to get, so it's within, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I think like we should move forward. The thing is that Kate originally thought that like the committee could do it, or she could do it, or an intern from the high school could do it. This has gone through a number of iterations. I don't think that actually works. I think high school kids, while super smart and really great on computers, have higher priorities, like the prom. And they don't get to these projects which have to then include staff during the workday, working hours, etc. I'd love if there was somebody on Youth Bureau who wanted to work on something like that. I would love for you guys, I mean, your consultants, that you might work with maybe the environmental group in the high school
Yeah.
or with, but I don't think members of the committee that are so short-staffed already, which is where Kate was going, is gonna work. And I think that's one of the reasons, that's been one of the boulders in the road to success. So let's get that boulder off the road, move it forward. Let's get an actual estimate and see if it's able to be done in 2025, I think, right? Because we've already approved it. We already said, let's do it a year ago. And let's just find a different way of doing it. If the youth bureau, which I'm very high on, if we can get a couple of the kids there to do this as a project, it would be great with, even with you guys, not with the committee. It would be a great learning. Kate is actually an educator, so I think she would be turned on by that. And if not, then let's just do a straight on whatever with the committee actually managing, because it's already like was approved.
Right.
So, and I feel like knowing how money works, every month or two that we don't do stuff somehow costs us more, not less. I mean, all the costs need to be going up and up and up. Nothing personal, Valerie.
No,
I
I
just,
understand.
this is what
Correct.
happens. And if you guys could actually work with students as a partnership, it would be great for some of our students to have that
Right.
experience as well.
Absolutely.
It's just an opportunity that, might be usable. So if Kate watches the recording, the reason I also talk more than I need to is because it's all being recorded and I know some people are gonna watch this after the fact, and so I want to put it for the record, so that in 6 months when we have this conversation, we can just go back to this. Thank you for everything
very
that you
welcome.
do. Thank
You're
you for
very
the presentation.
Thank you all so much.
Couple of homework assignments there. All right, what's next?
So
We're moving.
spring is close. And for one of the small silver linings that came with COVID was the advent of expanded outdoor dining, which enabled businesses to maintain their businesses during incredibly difficult times. But people like it too. So as we plan for this next season, we are having some changes in the Main Street area. The first of which is that the approximately 64 spaces in the Brandreth parking lot, which is behind where Open Door and Main Street Deli is, will not be available for use for approximately a year, 18 months, starting probably somewhere around June. We don't have the definitive start date, but I believe the site prep work is going to start in June. We'll be taking down trees and doing some utilities work. And when we actually break ground sometime this summer, construction was about 12 months, let's say 18 months to be conservative. During that time, again, there won't be any parking in that lot. So for shoppers, for residents, for employees who typically park there, they will not be able to park there for obvious reasons. We have heard from the local businesses that it's very important that during the construction period for our downtown revitalization initiative projects, that we make sure that we keep downtown open and the businesses flourishing during that time. And we're very committed to doing that. Parking is always a conversation point. So we reached out to the businesses in the Main Street downtown district to get their feedback on whether or not they wanted to go forward with the Parklet program, which was initiated during COVID in many communities. The board did get feedback, and I think we can discuss that feedback, but a couple of points that I was also requested to get. For context, the only other community that we could find in Westchester that is still doing parklets is Dobbs Ferry. Dobbs Ferry runs approximately the same season. I think it's a little bit longer. They start a little earlier, or they end a little later than we do. We run our parklet season typically from April 1st through October 31st. It's a total of 31 weeks. There is a difference in the price that Dobbs Ferry charges. They charge $200 per space per month. We charge $50 for the entire season per space. We tend to have 6 to 8 restaurants participating with a total of 8 to 12 parking spaces. Not every restaurant takes just one space. We calculate lost parking revenue based on using a $10 per day per space. So given that the program runs for 31 weeks, depending on the number of parking spaces used, metered parking spaces used, lost parking revenue is between a little over $14,000 to a little over $22,000 annually. There is some staff work that goes into the parklets. Our DPW staff, our building department, village clerk, and corporation counsel are involved in some level. Typically takes our public works staff about 4 to 5 days for setup, 4 to 5 days for removal at the end of the season. The clerk's office processes the applications, layouts of the space are submitted with the application that goes to the building department. The building department checks it. If there's any structural awnings or coverings, those are also inspected by the building inspector. So they approve the drawings, then they go out and check to make sure that everything is where people said it would be, mostly because it's really important that we maintain ADA accessibility on all our sidewalks. Also, fire access is an issue, making sure that public electricity is not being used for outdoor lighting, things like that. Stuart does the yeoman's effort of gathering the insurance certificates. And I know this is sometimes onerous for the restaurant owners because this needs to be gotten from the building owners themselves, but it's important because that protects us from any potential liability, protects the taxpayer. So that is basically where we're at. I know that the board did receive directly, and I think you received more direct feedback than I did. So based on the feedback, I think that's really what's driving the conversation, and I turn it over to the board with that background. But again, the real impetus was making sure that as we limit the parking, that the spaces that we're taking actually benefit the entirety of the businesses, pro or con, depending on whether we do the parking or don't do the parklets rather. So.
So I'm gonna put it into some other context. The work session is designed for discussion amongst board members based on presentations done by staff, which we just got. So I just want to clarify one thing, or maybe you said it clearly, but I didn't hear it that way. The parklets are in addition to outdoor dining. The village is always supported and people get permits for outdoor dining is different than parklets. Sidewalk cafes.
Sidewalk cafes are permitted year round. We have waived the fees. So right now, since COVID, we have not reinstated the fees to have a sidewalk cafe. You do, however, have to fill out an application. You have to make sure we have a layout. There still is some work that we have to do. We still need the insurance. However, a sidewalk cafe can be done year round.
Okay, so these are in addition to sidewalk cafes.
These are, yes, the parklets are in addition to the sidewalk cafes.
Right, because I think I did get some letters and there seemed to have been some confusion in outdoor dining versus sidewalk cafe versus parklets. Some people didn't know what a parklet.
Nothing right now is changing with sidewalk cafes.
Right, so any business that wants a sidewalk cafe still can have a sidewalk cafe as long as they meet the requirements that a sidewalk area has to be maintained, so the public use. So I think when the village manager also, as we know, talks about the village and revenue, she talks about taxpayers. It's the pros and cons or the trade-offs between lost money that gets used for downtown enhancements that will not be seen. And there are now 6 parklets. I mean, there have been 8, but there's 6, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe we don't
I mean,
have.
we could get more.
We
People
could get more. We typically get we could get as many as 8. The applications
Right.
are not full in.
Right, so the other 100 or so brick and mortars really aren't involved in all of this. So I'm going to add some data points, not really questions, comments, or judgments. I received probably a couple of dozen letters. I think like the BOT was covered because there are 3 public ways for people to reach board members individually. They call us, they email us, they see us in the supermarket and talk to us, or in their place of business. We all live here, and many of us frequent many places often. So, you know, we get that feedback, the public feedback. The other public feedback is the BOT email that people send information to. And another one is simply to, you know, contact the village manager's office. So I received a couple of dozen, mostly in favor of parklets. So it's not, the reason this came up, so that everybody understands, is that these were done temporarily. They were not, it's a simple question by the staff. Do we put them up again or not? Because they're done. It's a temporary request that the board made during COVID. COVID is over. Everybody else is not renewed it. It's not taking a program down. It's simply ending a program that was supposed to be ended. And a board member asked that we look at the data and make decisions, because it isn't fair to the staff to make, and they're not supposed to make policy or legislative decisions. And this will be a policy. Not even sure it's something we necessarily vote on. I think last year it was one of those, should we continue or not? And everybody nodded and said, okay. And we went on, but it's not fair to the staff to make these decisions. So it's whether you take a temporary item and say, yeah, time's up. We're not putting them. Do outdoor cafes, the retail space that businesses have rented and have built up, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the data points and where it all started. And I think that is what we're supposed to do when a board member or anybody really wants us to discuss something, especially when it's designed as temporary, to whether we want to put them back up or not, whether it's this or any other item. It's very normal. And thanks for also reaching out to the businesses. I know you also went to businesses. So some of the businesses wanted, and there were a number of businesses that don't want it, and most didn't write us letters. We have 30,000 people that live here. We get 24 letters, and another dozen, I would say, came from either against or like somebody who lived in Croton, and somebody who likes to come here to go to First Village on a regular basis to meet her friends. And I got a couple of calls that said, you know, I don't have one of those, but I'm totally neutral. It doesn't matter to me whether there is one or not. It doesn't affect my business one way or the other. And if people want it, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. And that's sort of the breakup. And I'm sure others have gotten, some people have called them individually that I don't know about, et cetera. So those are, to me, data points. There are issues of whether we have parklets or not going forward. There are issues of what the fees will look like going forward and how much staff time is spent. Because here's the thing about staff time that everyone should understand. Every hour spent on something is an hour not spent on something else. It is not an accordion that spreads forever. You spend an hour dealing with a problem here, you're not spending your hour doing it there. It is not as people think about, well, they get paid for their time anyway. It's a finite set of asset that you use, and that's the village manager's job. It's a huge job, a couple of hundred employees, including police and fire and volunteers and everybody. And so that's what we think about when we think about use of time. It's not about just their wage for that specific hour or day. It's the banners they have to put up that takes 2 weeks. It's the stuff they have to take down. It's the damage done by floods. It's all of that stuff. And then we look at everything together. We actually do it during budget. So I'm going to open the discussion up to any conversation. At the end, we don't vote on this. This is not a piece of legislation. It's not even policy. So we're going to decide as a board how we want to go forward as next steps, depending on which way the board is leaning, which is totally within our purview. And we will also have to discuss fee. If we want to go forward and do another year or whatever, we will also have to decide on fees, because until now, we basically charge nothing. But if you're going to do it another year or another year, we've got to like discuss fees, because I think that's fair, which is, I think, why the village manager looked at other programs. So I don't care what side we start on. I just wanted to frame people. Do you have anything to say?
Oh,
or anybody?
I'm more than happy. I'm more than happy to start. First of all, Karen, thank you. Maddie, thank you for the information that I requested. Just a little, I'm a numbers guy. It's about approximately 500 hours of labor set up and breakdown, 1 year. If we do it this year, it'll be 2,500 hours that the DPW has spent on this. 2,500 hours. I understand why we did it. We did it during COVID to help them out. COVID's over for 4 years now. We've also made statements that we're probably not going to be holding any events on Main Street this year due to construction. There's going to be a lot going on down there. I believe it's time to move on and move forward and not have the parklets. And the fact that we've been giving them away for the past 3 years, 4 years, if I know I'm maybe a minority here, but if we're going to move forward, then we need to really think about the fee that we're going to charge. But it's a lot of man hours spent on these things. So that's all I have right now.
Thank you, trustee Fritchie. Anybody else? Not everybody has to speak, but if anybody wants to say anything, please do. Sure.
So for me, for me, it is helpful to start with time. My colleague started with numbers. I'll start with time. And what I see it as is 3 periods of time. There's COVID, there's post-COVID, pre-DRI, and then there's DRI. We're past the COVID era, which is where this came from. We're sitting squarely in the post-COVID, pre-DRI period, where when you look at Main Street, it looks the same, but there's stuff that's about to happen. And every year, for the next few years, the downtown is going to be looking different as different kinds of projects come in and out of different phases. And then once all those projects are done, there's a post-DRI period, which is much more stable. You really know what that space is going to look like. As I see it, we functionally have 3 choices. We can keep the parklet program going exactly as is. We can remove the program and have it not exist, or we can keep it with some changes. From my perspective, particularly given the period of time that we are in, I would be in favor of keeping it with some changes. The idea would be the following. Evaluate what are the benefits of this kind of program and what are the downsides. We already know from many of the messages that we've gotten, there's a strong community response from folks that they really like it. They like to sit outside and it creates a community feel. It increases the pedestrian kind of nature of the village. It certainly helps the businesses that are there, whether it's the folks that are actually dining and helping the business that way, or just increasing foot traffic that helps generally. But nothing is just positive. There are negatives as well. And so how do we contend with those? Some of those have already been elevated, the costs associated with them, with the actual parking spots, and we're losing that revenue. The village manager set it up with, hey, there's 64 spots that are no longer going to be around. The other side of the equation is if we continue the parklet program, those are about up to 12 spots that we also wouldn't have. And so that increases the pressure for people to be able to find where to be. There are sanitation considerations, safety considerations, because you have people that are closer to the street. There's a number of things. In addition to what my colleague mentioned about the amount of effort it is on the village to set it up, to maintain, they have to go out and inspect and make sure that everything's good. With all of that being said, I think it is a net positive to have them there. And I think that the way that you do it is, for me, you evaluate year to year. In this current year, in the period we are in, post-COVID, pre-DRI, I think that it's totally fine to have the parklet program functionally the way we've had it before, with a reevaluation of the monetary piece, just so that we are making sure that that makes sense. But I think that it wouldn't have any functional downsides. The reason that we're saying no Main Street events for the foreseeable future is because for those Main Street events, many times we close off the streets and all that. It's entirely too much. but the parklets don't interfere with the main street in the same way. It still be able to flow. So I think on balance, keeping the program, but evaluating it every year to see where's the downtown and what do we need to do. And then there's going to be a bigger conversation in the post DRI period where we say, okay, we've now rebuilt the other side of our main street. We have this new multimodal parking facility. There are all of these things that are around. There's more parking because of the road diet that's happening on North Highland. All of that is in place. What makes sense now moving forward? And it may just be Ossining and Dobbs Ferry holding hands and doing the thing. That may be it. There are other communities like Terrytown, they got rid of it, but then they closed down the streets during certain weekends of the year. You know, our geographies are different. We're responding to what we have. So I think that that's where we really evaluate what's going to make sense on a more permanent basis. And my recommendation would be, let's keep it for this year with reevaluation of the monetary piece.
Okay. Dana, any commentary? Again, not necessary, needed, but if you want to.
Well, everybody knows I'm all about feelings, right? Little Miss Empathy over here. And I think that the benefits to the mood and the atmosphere of the village, especially these days, you know, I enjoy it. I think the stretch on with the 3 businesses and the red umbrellas, and, you know, it's great and it brings a lot of life to the street. I agree that maybe we need to relook at the fees, but I think right now, I think it's completely appropriate to continue with them. And I would strongly urge that we do.
Okay. Pat?
Thanks. Thanks. A lot of my comments have been made already. I'm, you know, personally, I enjoy them. I've used them on a regular basis, but, you know, multiple ones of them from that perspective. And I do think that from a like a public, like drawing people into the village, I do think they'd make a difference. I do think that, you know, one of the things for me personally is, you know, I like to, and one of the reasons is to, you know, what can we do to support local businesses? And it feels like this is one that supports many of the local businesses. I know there are some local businesses where they have a different perspective, but the preponderance of what we've received so far has been this supports local businesses from that perspective. And I too, you know, I really like, you know, I really like the perspective of, like, let's think broadly about what it looks like at the other end of what'll be, you know, a couple of very busy years. You know, we've got a lot of wonderful things going on in the village, from, you know, the multimodal parking, which is really going to alleviate some of the core challenges, which then frees up a lot of capacity for the village. And, you know, we're putting a lot of investments into, you know, on the top of that, there's going to be some space in the, you know, in the Caputo Center. There's going to be, you know, a bunch of changes, a bunch of other changes downtown. And so I think, you know, really thinking about that holistically and, you know, what's it look like post DRI is really the right way to do it. You know, I'm also, you know, in favor of let's, you know, keep it in place. Let's take a look at the fees associated with it. And let's also, you know, if there's, you know, I have noticed a couple times when I've been down there, I've done some cleaning up of stuff that's just around. Like, I've just gone and taken care of some stuff that's out there. So some garbage, but that's kind of my perspective.
Great. So Bob, I would agree with you. I think that the board is leaning the way it has actually been leaning. I think it is really important that the staff actually brings forth the data, which is what they're supposed to do. Sometimes with the recommendations, sometimes not. You know, in this case, it was more like, hey, this is what it looks like. So I appreciate all the work that was done, because we're going to have to do exactly the same thing again. I happen to like parklets. I like sitting outdoors, COVID or no COVID. I am around this village as I was today a lot, and have heard with or without the letters. Already knew that a lot of these places that have the parklets actually are destination places from people and brings people in, which I think is good for all the businesses. And I do appreciate that there are some businesses that don't like it. It not only doesn't help them, it also interferes with their own clients and their own traffic, and they have that right to their opinion as well. And I'm sure we'll be hearing. So for me, I'm absolutely leaning into keeping the parklets, which means that there was certainly 3+ members, which is what it takes. It's not actually a vote. Again, this is not a policy or legislation. I appreciate you guys doing it. I know that you guys wanted to do it actually a month and a half ago, really. And then we asked, please get some input from the community who's actually down on Main Street, which is because it starts in April. I don't know if you'll be able to do all this by April 1. We're in the middle of March. That's another issue. When it was temporary and it was COVID, it was like, buy the stuff, and we'll pay for it. The taxpayers are going to be fine with it. Whatever we can do for the businesses from here and all of the 3 corners, the Arcadian to 133, what can we do for people? Like, people have ideas. Now it's not that discussion anymore, so it's going to have to be a discussion. It is an issue. Wires running through, garbage under the platforms because they can't be cleaned, all sorts of stuff, some safety issue that we've heard about. So, but I think we can work on those. Those are pebbles in the road. They're not boulders that block anything. So all in. And while not a vote, I see no reason to actually bring this aspect of whether we have them or not. And I appreciate how much work goes into it. And we'll have to hear what suffers for it, but you get back to us on that. Use the same metrics. I would do it every year, probably around February, to look at the pros and cons. Because for me, on this case, although I'm usually data oriented, the truth is that the reason we have board members and human beings who live here on this board is to really have the empathy of saying, and when you take all of this data, put it through and pump it out and say, what does it cost us and what the pros and cons? At the end, we have to make the humanistic decisions. Sometimes we go only on data and sometimes we go only on what we think as people. So for my 1-person vote, I'm going to say that I would like to keep them exactly where they are. You will have to let us know if there's any individual that is not meeting whatever standards we've set, because there are a couple of safety issues that are really serious and concern me. Whether cars can pass safely and buses can pass and when people can move around and they're blocking handicap access and all that other stuff that we have to look at. So I'm going to leave that to you. And because we are in that moment, so I like the way you put it, we are in the moment. I hate to talk about a lot of construction. I believe that it's about investment. We are investing millions of dollars into the downtown area, down to the waterfront community center, that we believe will improve housing issues and economic development. So I think the investment is well worth it. The faster we get through it, the happier we're all going to be. But until then, there's going to be a lot of issues in front of the board. I mean, I think this is just the beginning. So it's, so we don't need to vote on this particular. Now we have to discuss fees. That we do have to put into a resolution. Okay. Okay, if we keep it at 50, a whole $50 for months of time.
No.
Which I can understand why this is in front of the board. I don't know, I know that we've all talked about this, but we haven't discussed fees. Everybody's in favor, but nobody seems to maybe have a number. Anybody have numbers in mind? Okay, anybody have a number in mind? Let me hear it.
My proposal would be the equivalent of the lost parking revenue. So it's $10 per day per spot. That would be, if you're looking at an average of 30 days. Somebody, was that?
I'm doing it right now. 30 times 10, it's 300. 300. Okay.
Okay, that would be my
Per
proposal.
month.
Correct.
Okay.
Per spot.
Per spot. That would be my proposal.
What's a spot?
A parking spot.
Parking
space.
spot.
One, fits one car.
The name Parklet actually is such a weird name. Okay, Pat?
Are the meters in effect on Sundays?
I was gonna say
That is,
it's 10 hours per day, Monday through Saturday,
So it's
no
ex-
payment on Sundays,
yes,
overnights and
the-
holidays.
yes.
Yeah, she's,
So
I've
it's-
already
it's a-
calculated.
So I want to amend, I'll amend it.
So,
I'm looking for parity. It's the equivalent, whatever the
yes.
equivalent is.
We do charge $10 for spots, even for unmetered spots, but are usually used for other purposes too, because some of the spots are taken down on Lower Main are not metered.
And what does that?
It
come to
is
per month?
that, I mean, I just want to note that the board would be going from $50 for the whole entire season
Right.
to $300 a spot per month.
I think that's excessive.
So it's a big jump.
How many hours? What is that? 60?
I just think that's too big a jump.
Do you have a number?
Oh, it's reality.
$100.
Okay. This
Per
is gonna
spot
be
per
like
month.
a Vinnie-
No, instead of $50 for the season, it's $100.
For the
So see,
season,
here's-
for the
here's-
season.
For the season, because here's I'm curious to hear your response. That to me, it would be either keep it at 50 or get the equivalent of what we would get if people were actually parking there. And to me, anything else is more arbitrary. It's like, why 100? Why not 150? Why not 75? Because we're not charging them more because we don't like them or we want to punish them or inflation. But the idea is we charged the absolute minimum we could, something that was nominal during an emergency period. We're out of that period. And so there are going, we're not doing this, we're doing this to benefit the whole village, right? So you have to think about what is the cost and what is the equivalent of like what we're losing as a village. Which is why I propose it.
Well, we've been losing that parking revenue now for 4 to 5 years, right?
Right.
Right.
Have we gone bankrupt as a result?
That's not
No.
the point.
I want to make a point about the parking revenue. So the parking revenue, as the mayor said, but I just want to make sure that this is clear, it does get reinvested back into the community. So it's not going off into some slush fund or, I just want to make
Should
that
be
clear.
somewhere.
So it does get reinvested in. When we looked at this, there was a great range. I think that in fact, I remember looking at
Yeah, we
Dobbs
did look at
Ferry,
this.
they were looking to charge 200, I think that's what they charged during COVID.
Right.
So, and they would have similar to, so while I understand what trustee Lopez is saying, so that it's Deputy Mayor Lopez is saying, so we're not doing it arbitrarily. I would say too, that given, it's a little bit of a nuanced thing. There's no perfect science here. But similar to what we charge for events or things, other things that we say, okay, well, these are enhancements to our village, it's making the downtown more lively. So there is a cost, in a sense, a cost benefit of doing the parklet. If you're saying the majority of businesses want it, or people, it brings more people who presumably might eat and shop or, things like that. And I know not every business likes it. So again, no perfect science here. There may be an opportunity also to consider an offset, similar to how we do with the event policy, where we don't actually get the exact amount that is.
Right.
So I just want to
So
say
the
there's
comment
middle,
about, look,
there's a range of ways to look at it. So I just want to.
this is exactly the same analysis as the deputy mayor said, as it is, and it's not about whether we go bankrupt. We do over 50 free events for the community because it's open to the entire community. Here you're subsidizing 6 private businesses. The revenue goes to the businesses, period, end of conversation. Now you have to add in, what does it cost everybody else, right? Not everybody goes to these businesses, to be honest with you. And we don't subsidize a dry cleaner with stuff. We don't subsidize private industry. The events that we do for everybody. It's open to everybody and almost all of them, if not all. That's why we demand that they be free, because everybody can go. So it's not a fair analysis. The deputy mayor is right on one hand. On the other hand, there is a public good to investing in small businesses, which are challenged by, Amazon and Walmart and the malls and other municipalities. And so somewhere in that has to be an amount that may not be as much of a science. Now we know, to your point, Bob, the time, and we know the revenue. But these are private businesses. And while people enjoy them, we don't subsidize all the 100 and other brick and mortar. And so somewhere in there is probably an amount that I don't think we'll do it scientifically, But the staff shouldn't be the ones doing it either. It's not fair to them because we're in charge of budgets and we have that fiduciary responsibility. I also agree with you. Like 100 doesn't make sense either. So we could spend, and we have spent hours on whether we should charge $5 or something or $18 or something. I mean, we have spent hours on it. We can spend hours tonight, but I know that you all knew this was on the agenda. You all have been talking about it. It's not like we sit around doing nothing all week. We actually, most of us work all week on issues related to the village. So I feel like it's a lot of money. And I appreciate that Dobbs Ferry gets it, and I understand that that's their model. It's fine. For me, if I may, just make a suggestion and see how it sits with people. There are a few benefits here. There is an overall downtown village benefits. I actually wish we could have helped every business during COVID in a similar way. We couldn't. If we could, we would have. It is also true that COVID's been over for quite a while. And it is also true that some people don't like these because it bothers them. I think that the net is this is an advantage to the community. These are destinations that people come in for. During all of the change that we make, I want all these businesses to stay here because I want them to be here when I think the rents will start going up, when, you know, we start having more housing, we start doing all the stuff. So I don't like the $50. I think it's not even worth the work that you people do to even collect the $50. So that is not okay. And free is also not okay. So what I think it seems to me is that we come up, I'm not sure if the spaces matter. I mean, you're very good. So I'm looking at you because you're very good at this, sort of because you spend so much time on this stuff. There's, I guess, the smaller ones and the larger ones, right? The largest one uses 3 spaces. Okay, what's the largest?
So
Is it the brewery with 4 spaces? What do they have?
no, I think that the most anybody has is 2 spaces. It's not a perfect science. So like, let's not like, basically 2 spaces.
Okay, so
On
that's the
upper, you know,
average.
you have angled in parking that makes a little bit different. Sometimes you have to take an extra
Oh, that's
space,
right.
but
You have it.
but sometimes
Okay.
the Yodocs bleed into the other spaces.
Okay.
It may or may not create something that the restaurant's not benefiting, but you have a few different parking layouts on the street. So basically, I don't believe there's any nobody gets more than 2 spaces
Okay.
that they can use
the map.
as those spaces that
Okay.
they're using. The amount of space it takes up in some cases may bleed over, but the restaurant's not. No one's sitting there. It's just the logistics of getting the barriers.
Okay, and I forgot about the front end. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the only thing I've got to add to the to the fee issue is I'm leaning more towards a monthly fee that's so it's partially commensurate. I'm kind of in line with you where I do think it's you, right? You, right? Because you know there's some number, it may not be 100% recoup, but you know there is a number. The other piece that I wanted to add to the conversation is, even though we said we were going to kind of do this on a year-to-year basis, there, you know, when coming from the business world, like there's quite often when there are step changes in costs to facilities or something like that, there's a bit of a graduated kind of scale to put in place so that the individual year-to-year implication on the business, it gives them from that perspective. So even though we said it was going to be like we're going to look at it year to year, I would even consider, okay, if we're thinking about it, it's, you know, more than likely we're going to do it again next year, you know, and maybe there's some graduated stepping stone towards a full fee,
And the idea
kinda,
is.
whatever that full fee is,
With
right?
more square footage, the revenues are higher as well for the store. So there should be, like, it shouldn't be unaffordable. And if somebody thinks it's unaffordable, they're not gonna do it because it doesn't make sense for them. So if you do it, I'm literally using my calculator as I'm talking here. How many months is it, Karen?
7.
It's 31 weeks. So if you do it by week, that's
7 months.
Okay.
yeah, but.
You don't think
I'm
I
sorry.
know?
Yes.
It
That
doesn't
makes-
matter. Well, I think we can figure that out. So if you do it at somewhere around the 50, but per month, and there's no question about how many months, you can't choose to do 2 months or 3 months, to do 50 per month and call it about somewhere between 350 and 500 for the season. And if you extend it, that we don't look at it every year, so we're not sitting here having this conversation. I haven't heard this part. When I spoke to you, I didn't even think about that. And commit to like a 2 years, so people, if they want to buy new chairs, they're not going, oh, I don't want to do it if I'm only going to do one season. I'm not.
I don't disagree,
Yeah,
and in a
but
perfect
please,
world,
share.
but you're gonna have construction going, like, I don't know what the timing, I don't see a reason why this wouldn't go on in 2026. But
You don't want to guarantee it.
we live in a very unpredictable environment, so.
She doesn't know how much space she's gonna need, for trucks that need to park for 3 months,
You're
it might
gonna
end up
have-
being in the summer and. they
Again,
need those
I don't
spaces.
anticipate next year, but once you start construction on the post office parking lots, I don't think it would be an issue, but you're gonna have construction going on, and maybe it's not going to be as desirable to be sitting outside because there's.
Okay,
construction
so,
for that
but that's a
season.
different issue.
And
That's
we'll
up to
go-
the business. So it's 2025, because it starts in April.
Yeah.
And 26, you're not starting the post office parking lot construction in 26.
Okay,
It's 2025.
okay, 2025,
It's October. Ends in October. So it's only 25.
I know.
right, but if you wanted to do
It
26,
would be
I just,
26, and I'm
yeah.
wondering whether we're gonna start the post office actual construction in 26. You're saying you don't.
I mean,
know.
we don't know. In,
Given that. what do you
probably
think?
not, but.
I like the idea.
So I was actually saying, like, you know, like I still think it needs to be year to year, because I do think that there's going to be a huge variability in the construction and all that kind of stuff. But I think we could, as a board, and communicate that we treat it as if we expect it to be, and, you know, tell the businesses, like, look, in 2 years, it's going to be full fare. This year it's not.
Oh, I see where you're
And,
going.
and it allows businesses to plan a little bit more from that perspective.
I know. what it is.
Be about
Whatever,
250 a
whatever
month.
the end cost
The
is.
the
yeah.
$10 per
Yeah.
spot.
Per day minus holidays, minus Sundays. It's about 250 a month.
Okay.
So it's about 250 a month per space, give or take.
So without having to be a math genius here, it feels too high for me. Okay, in a village like ours for the businesses. So I'd like to see something that's a little bit lower than that. If at all possible, because we're not recouping the money, but we also are not here to not recoup anything. It's just not logical at all. So to me, somewhere that feels a lot better for per month is something like a couple $100 per month for the 7 months. I'm looking at you because
No, I'm waiting for you to finish so I could talk.
that's, I'm throwing that number.
Right, well, I'm on the same wavelengths as the deputy mayor. The 250 is probably be full value. All right, I'm willing to do 200 a space per month.
Okay.
That would be next year or this year?
No, this
Let's
year,
talk about this year.
right now.
Next year, we don't even know.
Well, Mayor, you had said $50 a month?
No.
No, who said $50 a
Everybody
month?
said a lot of numbers.
No, you did. Nobody else said it.
I did? No, I didn't. I said $100.
$100.
100 for the
Right.
season.
Okay. Got it.
I'm good.
Okay, no, because it's not actually what I said. My number's actually smaller than that, so.
What was your number, man?
Let me do this again. It's not a per space, it's 200 a month. 7 months. Is that too high?
No,
Okay.
we're still not.
So it's $100 a space.
1,400.
You're talking $100 a space then.
You know what?
It's, if you're doing 200 and there are 2 spaces, it's $100 a space per month.
Yep.
I'm at 200, I don't know where. Walmart has.
I just want to see where we're landing. I am open, just for the record, I am open to a smaller number. I'm not stuck on that it has to be full freight. I just you know, I think that we're mostly starting from the point that the current number is too low. And so just trying to find something, what's going to be not overly heavy of a number. And what's not gonna be too low. It's a matter of taste. So I'm open. I think at this point, I'm like, my feeling is exactly the same. I'm actually like either full for 8 or keep it at 50 is like where I actually am. But like as a result, I don't feel strongly about it. If 3 folks felt like let's do 150 per month per spot or whatever, you got my vote. You got my support 100%.
I have to stretch, and I'm also trying to remember what people have said they thought would be, and not a lot of people. But it's only the businesses that don't like it. Thought would be-
I'm sorry, can you speak into the microphone?
I have to stretch a little bit. Okay, you don't have a recommendation because it's not really your thing. I think the increase in the investments for this year should be somewhere in the $500 for the entire season. I can explain the whole thing, it won't matter. And I think that this year, if we pass this, it would actually be higher. It's not a science, and everybody's gonna write to me and say, how did you come up with that? Why didn't you ask this person and that person? Because I'll tell you why. Because nobody wants to pay anything, and nobody thinks they should pay for parking, and nobody thinks they should pay for garbage, and nobody thinks they should pay for the plywood that cracks and any of that stuff. And the 30,000 we spend on all the other stuff that we do, and 100 hours of all of that. At the end of all of this, on a very human level, it seems to me that if we go up just for the season, what I consider to be a very inexpensive, it would also mean that like, you're gonna have to, go to the 6 businesses. Cords running across the pavement are a big no-no. Plywood that's old and rotten and somebody falling, big no-no. I'm going to consider this not a mandatory, but a privilege to have it, that everybody's paying for. Because I think the advantage at the end of all of this conversation is this is a really nice thing for our downtown. That the parks are great, that they're lovely, that people enjoy them, and I've seen very little downside on the human side of it, and I want to vote on the human side of it. That said, some of the financials have to be returned because something has to be paid back. I'm sure 500 is not a big amount. I totally get it that the mayor's rational and say, why 500
500
for the
Five-
season?
per space for the
For the
season.
season.
Okay,
And people could have less space if they don't want to pay it. They could have more space if they don't want to have it. Do whatever they want. The revenue is being made because otherwise, we wouldn't. I don't think it's unreasonable. They're not paying rent for it. Landlords aren't supposed to charge rent for that space. How does that feel? Well,
So it would be, just for clarity, it'd be, if you have 2 spaces, it's $1,000 for the
for
season.
7 months,
for the entire 7 months.
for the entire 7 months.
So I just want to also add the importance here, because you mentioned paying rent. So this is an important, and this is something I've talked about with council. During COVID was exceptional time, and we do want to support our business. So extending this to not having fees for certain things, particularly for our local businesses where we can, has been important, and we've maintained that. And it's, again, I want to be real clear. It's our budget's very transparent. Every dime's accounted for. You can look at it online. Anybody can see it. The challenge, though, that we run into in a non-COVID environment is gifts of public funds. And this is where this is where we're skirting into a situation where we're several years past COVID. And while I understand very well how hard it is to run a small business, the village cannot provide things for private entities that then they profit by, because that's really at the expense of the taxpayer. So it is important that we right size this to a degree, and it's, in that regard, it's the same thought process that went into our event policy fees and making them consistent, because that gift of public funds is really not legal. And it's just something that Corporation Council and I have talked about, that we have a lot of a lot of considerations to make for this because specific entities benefit, as you mentioned. Some entities don't benefit at all. A few feel that they're hurt, not very many, but a few. And that has to be, when you own a business and you expand your real estate, you typically pay more money for that. So that's the dance we're doing here.
Okay, which is why I think the amount is fair. Others might argue that it's too low and it's actually a gift, but I would disagree with that.
500, just for the record, is 10 times what we're charging now.
Yep.
I think it's great. You got 2 votes for 500.
Okay. Because we really haven't been charging is the real storyline. So we're not really voting, problem? If there's a legal issue, I better hear it now because
No, what I would say
all the
is,
people that tell me how much they love stuff, there
The-
are going to be people who are gonna sit there and say, you're not listening to me. And you know, the squeaky wheel doesn't get the oil. You've told us that a million times. So I gotta know right now.
The manager has expressed what is my concern,
Okay.
which is that you are effectively, even at 500 a month, given that you are providing them with the services to set them up, to break them down, to do my work, to do the building department's work, you are effectively giving a benefit. I understand you raising it by 10 times, but I do want you are on a slippery slope here. My recommendation is not germane to this. I am just saying that there is a very strong argument that these businesses are benefiting from something that no one else can benefit from, number one, and that the village is not getting back essentially what it should be getting. I should point out that when we do events downtown and we are taking up parking spaces, we charge for that particular
That's why you
space.
do it.
And that's how it's done. So I will just leave it at that. In terms of the board, but if this is the board's sense, there can be a resolution next week. I do just want the board to understand.
Because we're changing fees, not whether there's parklets.
Right.
Right.
in that regard to what I had asked, Corporation Council just now is that we can probably still make the,
April 1?
1st.
Okay.
But I would have the application sent out tomorrow with the new fee. If people get their applications in time, we can start, so, you know.
And if they don't, you'll do it later
Um,
or not? Or is there a date that you have to do it by? Because you have to do the
make-
whole,
To make it efficient, like it really, I have to have the guys on that same week to do it. Because
Okay.
otherwise, if they keep going back and forth and doing it, you know, custom for everybody, that gets
Okay.
crazy.
okay.
But we should be able to start if we send out, you know, notice that the applications are due. We'll
So
send it out
just
tomorrow.
quick question, Stuart, to keep this off of that slippery slope, so to speak. We should be charging our full rate for the space. And then, or should we be charging for our labor that's there to put it together?
I think at a minimum, you have to charge the full freight for the space.
Okay.
That's at a minimum, because with regard to labor, it becomes a little bit questionable because we do that on other events. But I certainly think that with regard to that, and that would be consistent with what we do with other events, is we
Correct.
charge the full freight for the
Correct.
spaces.
So I'm still at the 250 per space per month.
I hear you, Bob. Okay. Having heard advice of counsel and understanding all of that, it is still the right of the board to make decisions. And I believe that, I get that we're no longer an emergency, and that is why so many things are able to be done. That's why the governor and the president, everybody wrote these executive orders under emergency. That's why they do that. There's a reason. It's like snow days. It's considered an emergency. People vote on it. It's not arbitrary and it's not random. It's not what we like or don't like to do personally. So I get it. I hear the skirting. I think that at least given that scenario, for this year, that it is fair to keep it at the amount I had suggested. I don't think, I think we're close to the line. For me, even hearing that advice, I don't think we're crossing that line. I think it is something that will allow businesses to, because they're gonna make more money. And arguably, Dana, the corollary of your argument is for 4 years, they haven't actually paid what other communities have had people pay. They've been paying a lot less. At the end of the day, I hear you. I hear the advice. I think we're close. I don't think we're over that line for me. And so I'm still willing to go with the amount I had suggested because I think it's reasonable and it's not free. And we put that as part of the fee change and we look at it, to your point, we're going to have to look at in February. I would suggest we send out a letter to the businesses affected on Main Street, that whole corridor, and I guess Spring as well. Do the same thing you did and say, what do you want to do? This time it'll include the fees. We can discuss whether they should progressively go up because they're getting real estate, right? And for me, it keeps all of these in business and makes the village as a whole, because what I don't think we can actually monetize, we control expenses, but what we can't monetize is revenues. And I get that we don't actually get the revenues, and the taxes we collect from small businesses are a sliver. I mean, they're like, without the condos and all those LLPs, it wouldn't even show up on a pie chart. They don't pay. The taxation from revenues don't pay for any of these fees. I mean, hasn't been discussed, but that's the reality. And we're very much aware of it when we look at assessments. So I'm gonna not look at that. People will write to me and I'll say, yeah, it doesn't actually count because it doesn't pay for it. But I think it's enough that it justifies some of the payback, because what I think is the biggest payback is that it makes our downtown look special. It makes it look great. And I could easily argue that it is a net asset to the community that other communities no longer have, which differentiates us in the marketplace. And on that perspective, you can't actually put a number on it, but I'll put a number on it. I'll say that it's worth a lot. And so for me, I'm still gonna go, even hearing the advice and usually going with it. I think this is enough that it's not free, which is what we've been doing basically for these years. So anybody
So I think
hates
by
that or
raising,
doesn't like that, or
well, by raising the rate, you're gonna probably whittle some people away who aren't going to feel it's as worth it if they have to pay that much.
that's true. But the
So that's
argument,
their decision.
that's their decision. But in fairness, that value of the real estate, if you paid rent, is nowhere near this amount. And it's in the summertime and it's done per month. So you're not paying for the whole year. And all the work that gets done, those things sit out there the whole year, whether the place is open or closed. And if it's not worth it, it's not worth it. But if it is worth it because you're getting revenue, then it's worth it. For me, the value is that it's good for the community. And now you could argue with me about, well, is it worth $200 per month to the community? It's you can always get expenses down. You always know your expenses. The asset, the brand asset to asseting, you could argue with me for hundreds of hours because there's no real answer to it. The value of a brand, and they're branding our village. They're branding our downtown with umbrellas and outdoor seating. And I think there's a value to it. I just don't think anybody can put a value to it. Even corporations can't put a value on their brand. It's very hard to do. So I actually would justify that they add value to our downtown by having these parklets and hope that all 6 of them continue. But theoretically, they're also making money on this. And so are the other businesses. They must be, because we got letters saying that it's very important to them, or that they'll lose 30% of their business if they don't have it. Okay, then there's a value to it. And that's actually the argument from a legal perspective of why you should charge even more. So I'm trying to come up with a reasonable amount that I think is doable and benefits everybody. That's where I'm coming at it. Anybody? Is that an agreement, or is that like, I'm not, you know, my view, and I'm looking at you, because my view is to come to a full consensus, not a majority. We don't have to have a full, but that's always my goal, that the board agrees in total. But if I can't get there, it's okay too. And Bob, from day one, I totally get what you're saying. I totally hear you. And I think many people would argue in that thing. So not changing your mind?
Nope.
Okay. Anything? That's fine.
I still believe like the year 2.
Okay.
Step up.
Are you okay with the number I just, and you? Folks on this side?
You've been having me for number 2.
Okay,
You're good.
you're basically telling me I could have stopped 10 minutes ago. Okay.
15
Okay.
for sure. With me.
Well, I agree
Oh, I
with
was
you that,
answering the legal
you know,
questions,
there's
that's
some
okay.
things it's hard to put a value on.
Yep.
And in this case, you know, the value is in the sense of community that it brings. And it's really hard to monetize that.
Yep.
But to me, it's worth it.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with all of that. We continue to do all the free events and continue to invest millions and all of that in that one small downtown area, which benefit all ships. Okay, Stuart, because it's fees, we need a resolution for next week. Okay, it'll be on the agenda for next week. And then it'll be public hearing or just on the agenda as a. It's a change on the agenda.
So we will, get the updated application out, so people have it, so they can start tomorrow.
Thank you guys for considering and really appreciate it. It is very important,
Can you please come to the microphone?
So Louise, we actually, unfortunately, next week, if you want to come and speak during the
Oh, no, I
agenda,
just want to say thank you.
the camera's still on. This is still a meeting.
Thank you.
So, no, we hear you.
Yeah.
We're just,
Wanted to say thank you anyway.
no, we appreciate that. And I'm sure we'll be hearing,
Yeah, cool. Have a good night.
looking for the input.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, we have the
I
Valley
need, I
Show.
need 5 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Valerie.
I'm gonna bring Valerie up now and we will take a short break.
Amy?
You ready?
Yeah. Ready.
All right, you're good to go.
Great, we're back, everyone. Thank you. I needed to get some water, took a little break, and we're on.
All right,
What's next?
so we have Valerie Menasha from Nelson Pope here. And as the board remembers, we've been talking about bringing zoning in the Station Plaza area and along the waterfront in line with the zoning recommendations of the comprehensive plan. Right now, they are not in line with what has been recommended. So Valerie is going to talk to us about potentially instituting a moratorium on residential development while we look at these plan options, so that we can avoid the situation of somebody purchasing something under the current zoning, and then us having an issue because we haven't changed the zoning. So I will turn it over to Valerie, and I'm sure Corporation Counsel and Deputy Assistant Village Manager Patty Zahach may chime in as well.
Yes, so thank you. So at the last time I was at the board meeting, work session, we talked about the priorities for 2025. And one of there's two zoning districts we talked about changing the uses associated with them. And that was the SPN, which is the Station Plaza North, which is the Secor Road, that Main Street area and Station Plaza. And the other district we talked about was the RDD, which is the Riverfront Development District, which are the properties west of the railroad tracks. And if you recall, we talked about the comprehensive plan specifically identified basically no residential development along the west of the railroad tracks due to the issues with flooding. And then
The west is where the water is.
that's correct. And then the Station Plaza North, we were in the middle of updating that because that's the particular zoning district that the board felt was too dense as it is currently in terms of what could be built there. And that's when we're revising. We developed that working group and we're in the middle of revising that zoning to be more reflective of what's there existing now. So we are in the process of working on both of those items to bring back to the board. But in the meantime, I think at the last work session, there was discussion from the board of potentially considering a moratorium on both of these districts, just in terms of potentially residential development until we get those two zoning amendments into place for the board's consideration. And I can turn it over to Stuart to talk a little bit about what that process really entails.
The moratorium requires a local law. It is considered a type 2 action under seeker, so there is no environmental review required. So the thought would be that next week, the board could call for a public hearing, which would be the first Wednesday in April, to consider the local law for the moratorium. Few things to consider about the moratorium. Valerie mentioned one, which is that it would carve out, it would just relate to residential construction, number one. The other would be the length of time of the moratorium. It can't exceed really 9 to 12 months as you're outside. So you might want it, you can put a 9-month, you can put a 12-month. And that's really it, because the courts are very clear that you can't really hold the zoning up for that level of planning that for longer than that.
Tell me the time again.
Anywhere between 9 to 12 months.
Okay.
So that should be looking at. So
Up to a
essentially,
year, basically.
right, so essentially it would be a local law that would, with regard to the RDD and the what is it, SPN zoning districts, essentially there would be a moratorium on development for residential projects only within those two zoning districts. And it would go, so in other words, if someone were to come in with a commercial project or something like that, that would still go through its regular process. It would not be held up, but only with regard to residential in those two zoning districts. And that would be the local law. It would basically sunset, and that would be it.
Right, and I'm sorry.
I have a specific question for
Yeah.
clarity on that. What if it's mixed? What if it's like 60% commercial, 40% residential on top or something like that? How does that work?
So it's going to be the construction, it would be construction of new residential units, right? So if you already have a mixed use building and you're looking to, to pull a building permit to improve the interior, that would be fine.
So it's
It's
just
really
new.
just new construction. That's correct.
Okay, but again, what if I'm in new construction and I want to do X percentage commercial and Y percent?
Right, then it wouldn't count.
A new mixed use.
Right,
building
it
would be
wouldn't count
considered
because
commercial.
it would, well, no, new mixed use building, it would be, if it would be no banning the
That
construction
that
of
would be
new
under the
residential,
moratorium
right, that would be
because
under the
it would
moratorium.
include residential.
So
Right.
any percentage, because we've been through
Yes.
this discussion before
Yes.
where things are both and we're not. able
Right.
to
There's
do something.
residential use that all.
Right.
Not be permitted.
Okay.
Anything that have a residence.
Right.
Right,
Okay, so that's the definition. Is this 1 year, and I'm just asking, I don't expect it, but I'm in favor of this, but I don't expect to go if, let's say in month 11, something happens, we want to extend another 6 months. Can you extend or does?
It can be extended, but it would be a shorter extension than you would be dealing with. And you'd have to give a good
A good
purpose or
reason.
reason to explain it, but there are circumstances where you could extend the moratorium.
Cause I remember the town doing a moratorium on something years ago, and I know something came up, they needed to extend it 3 months or something, and they did. I don't remember the exact storyline.
I do.
just-
I was on the town board.
Oh, there you
It
go.
was- it
So
was-
my point is, I think I have that about right.
Yeah,
They
that
needed-
it was, it
Okay,
took a long time.
okay,
right,
so, all right, so those were just my points for clarification. Go ahead.
right.
Valerie.
And the other thing I just want to note in terms of timing, we already have like the SPN, a draft of the SPN, probably like 80% complete. So we anticipate bringing that back to the board probably in May. And then the same thing with the Riverfront Development District. We have it sort of slated. I already talked to Karen and Maddie about that in May too. So this, we don't believe that you would need the 12 months in order to be able to make a decision one way or the other with, proposed zoning changes.
Okay, well, we'll see where that goes. We have so many other things we need and we can't have these meetings run forever. So we'll see where it goes, but good to know that it's not like a crisis mode that we're in. Excellent to know. Any questions, comments? Okay,
Yeah, did Briarcliff recently do this with the property? Or somebody very local, whatever.
Well, the town of Austining did it for the, no,
no,
No.
not recently, they didn't.
No, okay,
No.
I thought I read it. Okay, second question. I know we're specifically focused on SPN and RDD because we talked about that. Are there any other places where it makes sense to consider?
a moratorium for right now.
Yeah,
Uh,
while we've got stuff under,
Not what we have identified for the 2025 in terms of zoning updates, because a lot of times it's really focused on like uses, right? Or if you were dealing with like in the SPN, it's less about uses, but more about like some of the densities and stuff like
I
that.
understand.
And right now, I don't believe that there's any others.
Is there anything in the pipeline right now?
In-
That's already,
In terms in those two districts?
yeah,
No, except there is a commercial development that's potentially coming through for 34 Main Street, which you saw in terms of the cannabis dispensary. So that would be allowed to continue through that process.
that's a commercial.
That's correct.
In SPN.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Okay, everybody okay with this going forward? Anybody not okay? Okay.
Right.
Makes sense.
Thank you, Valerie.
And actually, thanks for being here earlier, because I think it helped with the board's present, all the-
He suggested I attend and listen, and I think what we'll do is I made notes and I'm gonna follow back with Maddie and Karen about trying to coordinate those quarterly chair meetings, and then also
Well,
any of the
said
other to-do
quarterly,
lists.
They
Right,
didn't say that, so may
Right.
I suggest you ask them.
exactly.
If
We'll
they'd like
coordinate
it
that.
quarterly, 3
Yeah.
times a year, really what they should do is meet maybe 3, because the point that we made to them is if you have any requests, you gotta bring it to us before the budget, so the
Right,
fourth
right.
quarter doesn't help them at all.
Right.
Right.
Although they would get to know, Bob also mentioned, I'm sure it's in your notes, can one of us attend or not? that kind of
Yes,
thing. So
yeah.
so that would be a 5th point of coordination, the 4
Absolutely.
times the 5. And then there is we wanna all get to meet each other, request. It's
I'll arrange it next, sir.
It's 100, yeah, it's
Notice.
actually in
Right.
certain, okay,
All right.
not a bad idea.
Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you.
Okay,
a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about a CREST grant that we had got for $100,000 from Senator Harcum. And the grant guidelines, we had talked about using it for a high-speed electric vehicle charger, and the board decided that they did not want to go forward with that. We looked at a range of different things that would qualify, and one of the things that pays for equipment, it pays for cars, it pays for different things. However, most of the things that we have in the capital budget right now need to be bought sooner than the grant will process. The grant is, CREST grants are kind of strange because you're almost guaranteed to get whatever you were told you were going to get, but the length of time to get it could be 9 months to a year. And if you purchase what you were supposed to get, or you complete the project that it was funding, then you don't get the money. So we had to sort of balance that. So we were looking at things that we could use the money for, and paving was something that we can do. So as you know, we are supposed to be going forward, and we have heard from the county. They're getting ready, so they say, to go out to bid for a CDBG grant that we were already awarded for streetscaping along Spring Street from Broad Avenue to Lafayette Street. We have a match to that project, and part of the match is drainage. But one of the things that we've done with drainage, and if you walk along at the corners of State and James Street, you will see what we call curb right-of-way stormwater gardens. This is mini rain gardens, but essentially it's very
I
specific.
drove by, I totally missed it.
You gotta look low. So if you're sitting up here in
missed
the
it.
car, you gotta look, they're on the
I
ground.
know.
But at this time of year, you might not see them because the plants aren't, fully
Okay.
bloomed. But in the spring, I'm gonna take you there. So on the corner of Lafayette and Spring Street, we'd like to use this money, the $100,000, to go to the drainage, which would be part of our match. In the event that for whatever reason we don't get the CDBG funding, we would still do this project. So it would be a standalone project in that case. But it would incorporate the drainage that's needed there that complements the streetscaping, as well as allow us to put in our curb right-of-way stormwater gardens. And these really are little like curb gardens where native plants grow and they absorb the water. And they're when you're walking on the street, they're really quite lovely.
In the street or?
They're right literally at the curb. They're in the, so there's like a little drainage drainage ditch channel, and the plants are right there, and it's like, yeah, it's right like by the curb.
Kept taking pictures when they were in blue, so we need to start taking pictures of all the work that we do.
So that's
Doesn't have
what
to go
in
like
speaking to our village engineer, that's something we came up with that we thought would be a good use of the funds, and it will work with timing, and it's work we were going to do anyway. So in this way, we don't have, we have another source of funding for it.
Okay, any other thoughts?
It's good to kind of back up.
A backup.
No, like this is a backup, just in case scenario.
Yeah.
I like it because everything's so fluid these days in terms of,
Yeah.
in terms of grants. Like,
Yeah. I mean, this is something we'll probably do, if we do the CDBG, it's part of the match. We probably need to do the drainage, even if we don't do the so we looked at all the, ways, but what we do try to do with these grants is use them for things that we're going to use. And then, once we use it for this, that frees up money somewhere else too. So.
Yeah, the more flowers, I mean, I happened to have gone up 2.0 years ago, they still do it. It's a huge drainage that they use flowers for, and they don't.
Yeah, I just need to see a picture. I can't.
I know, I drove by.
I'll have to
thinking
get
I'd
a
see
picture for it.
something.
I will get a picture.
Get a picture.
Paul might have one where it's blooming. I'll try to get a picture and get it. to
The
you
more
guys,
we
but
use natural
they're
environments.
just little small gardens by the curb that
Okay.
absorb rainwater.
Do you have to remove concrete? I mean, how do you, there has to be dirt and stuff. obviously.
Yeah, they dig them up.
So right now, there would just be concrete there. They would dig up the concrete where the gardens go.
So
So
instead
they're
of just
like,
concrete
they're-
and steel, they're also adding in fauna in order to, you know.
but they're like behind the curb, so it's not like cars can drive over them. Like they're within the curb.
The curb and the side.
Yeah, between the, yes, exactly.
Okay,
With tomatoes.
all right.
Okay, and next topic on the work session agenda is LexisNexis contract renewal.
How much is it costing?
Thank you, Karen.
He
The,
needs them.
our 3-year Lexus contract ends at the end of June. Lisa Ferguson and I got to kick the tires on the new platform, including the AI portion of it. And I know that some are not, this AI did not hallucinate, which is good for from a legal perspective. What we currently pay is $423 a month. The plan that I would propose for the board would be the upgrade to the Lexus platform, which is what they're all using now. The platform we're using, they're actually going to be sunsetting. But I would also want to add to it the AI platform, not the drafting part of the AI platform, but just the AI platform itself, which would afford me the ability to assist with some of the research that I do on a scale. The platform with the AI on a monthly basis would be $497 a month. So that's an increase of about $74 a month. And that would begin on July the 1st. If the board was amenable and we could enter into this contract before the end of March, we would get the AI platform for April, May, and June at our current rate of $423 a month. And just so the board is aware, for the first year, it would be $497 a month. Second year would be $522, and it would then go up to $548 a month. Lisa Ferguson and I use Lexus all the time. I mean, for virtually everything in terms of research that we have to do, it's finding all that stuff. So this is just going with the platform. As I said, they gave us a week's free use, and it was interesting to see how it interacts and what you can do. So that's just basically the proposal is to enter into this new agreement with Lexus. This would be our, I think, second agreement with Lexus. When I started here, we had Westlaw. We've been with Lexus since, and we're finding it just fine. So that would be my request to use what they call the Lexus AI with Protege platform without drafting, as I said.
Is this a license like for 3 of you or?
Just Lisa and myself.
So if you added a 3rd or 4th person, it would go up? Is that how this works?
Well, right now it's just for myself, and it's for one sort of assistant license. So I presumably, if there were more people, it would be more expensive. But
And does
right
the
now,
town have its own as well, contract?
I have no idea what the town has. Well, remember also the town has outside counsel
Right, so every law firm has its own contracts. Yeah.
with either Lexus, Westlaw, or some other. Those are the 2 main research companies. Yes.
Okey-dokey. Any objections? Like, I'm not sure that it doesn't sound like there's room for negotiation here, and we either do it or we don't. I assume you looked at Westlaw also just to see what the pricing was.
No, I didn't, because no, I mean,
Would you like what you have?
I like what we've got. I mean, and truthfully, it took me a while to learn Lexus, and I've learned it now. I'd rather have to go back and start learning Westlaw all over again. And frankly, all the cases that I need are there. The advantage of Lexus is that if I put in a Westlaw site, I get the they'll pull the case for me, which is nice. And they're very much up to date. They have a lot of legislative history, and we get all 50 states because there are occasions where we want to look at other states, plus law review articles and things like that. So it does help in that regard.
Great.
And so that's
All right.
the request.
You answered my question,
That's
sir.
great.
I was gonna ask if it was limited to just case law, didn't know how many states, but.
No,
you
it's-
answered it. You're good.
yeah,
You're-
it's everything.
You're good.
State and federal.
Okay,
Thank you.
that sounds great. Anything else?
Okay, we now are, can adjourn the meeting to enter the special meeting.
We're moving to adjourn the work session to go into special meeting.
So moved.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're closing meeting. It is 10:56.
No, 9:57.
What am I looking at? 9:57.
10 o'clock.
Almost 10 o'clock. 9:57. We have legislative session next week. I think you've heard what will be some of the items on the agenda. Have a great evening.
Now we're going.
Now in a special meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry, we're going to.
Special
Yeah.
meeting. One
Yes,
resolution.
no, we're going
Police
to
vehicle.
special meeting.
One resolution.
Yes,
uh,
sorry about that.
Finance, establishment of 2025 police vehicles capital project from 2024 general fund balance. Whereas village management wishes to establish a capital project for one marked and two unmarked police vehicles, which were presented as part of the village's 2025 capital plan and designated to be financed by accumulated and available surplus fund balance as of December 31, 2024. Now therefore be it resolved, the adopted budget of the general fund is modified in 2024 to appropriate unexpended appropriations and / or accumulated and available fund balance for 2025 capital plan items aggregating $241,000, and that the capital project and capital project budget be established as follows. And what follows is the list of changes that will be published at the clerk's office and be on the village's website. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any comments? Stuart?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, folks who have remained online. Do I have a motion to adjourn
No.
the special meeting to go into executive session for legal matters?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, folks.
Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. 9:59, we're adjourning the meeting and going to executive session for legal. Good night.